Get on board the Bernier bus train. Come get on board the Bernier bus train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Oh, get on board the Bernier bus train. Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernier Bus Show. Elizabeth Warren's Medical Care for All bill explained. Explained. This ought to be good.
Understand that. So it's a lot less likely this bill gets through than Bernie Sanders' bill. You could say it's unlikely Bernie's gets through as well. True. But this is even more unlikely because she looped in other issues. So this is how she pays for it.
She looped in immigration for one thing, and two unpopular things, and so looping things together is making her bill, according to Kyle, will make it much more difficult to pass.
Immigration reform, a wealth tax, and then this Medicare head tax, which is what they're talking about here. And the way that she gets out of saying it's a middle class tax is, oh no, I'm charging the employer. I'm charging the employer, and it's not a percentage. It's a dollar amount, just a dollar amount. So I can weasel out of it and say it's not technically a tax because it's a dollar amount and not a percent, and it's only for the employer, not the employee. But as you know, it is going to impact the employees as well. And the difference between...
This is how. You're trying to see how it's going to impact. Understanding Warren's Medicare for All employer tax. Democratic presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren has, as promised, released a plan to pay for her Medicare for All health insurance plan. She has come up with a clever way to make workers indirectly pay for a share of that single-payer government system while making it look like a new tax on employers. At least it's a single-payer system. At least she's not saying choice and all the other weasel things that have been said. But it is stealthy, and it is a flat tax. What we've figuring out is that because she'd base the tax on what employers currently pay for health coverage, she'd perversely punish those companies that offer the most generous and costly health insurance. This would be especially dramatic for small businesses. They'd be exempt from the tax if they do not offer health insurance today, but would owe the tax if they currently do cover their workers. As a worker, you might say, why do I care about any of this? I'm getting insurance now. I'll get it under Medicare for All. My employer pays a tax. It costs me nothing. Plus, I'll no longer have to pay my share of workplace insurance or most co-pays and deductibles. But the story isn't quite that simple. Workers, it turns out, will be paying some of this tax themselves, but indirectly. Here's why. When employers pay for your health insurance, they are using money that they otherwise might be paying you other compensation, such as wages. Absent Warren's new tax, a firm that no longer has to pay for insurance will likely use some of its cost savings to raise wages or other benefits. Thus, absent the tax, workers would get government-financed health care plus a raise. The only problem, it would blow a huge hole in the federal budget. With the tax, they will get no raise since the total cost of hiring a worker will remain roughly the same. The new tax will simply substitute for the cost of today's employer-sponsored health care, minus 2%. Thus, workers still will be paying a tax, but it will be indirect and very hard to explain. And that's the whole beauty of this weaselly plan. I have a plan for that. It's a weasel plan, but I have a plan for that. Matt Bruenig, People's Policy Project. He is a little more direct about it. Elizabeth Warren released her Medicare for All financing plan today. The main purpose of the proposal appears to be to find a plan that you can message as not increasing middle-class taxes, which we saw in the debates, where she would not answer any questions. It does increase middle-class taxes. It's just doing it in a weaselly way. It's a nonsensical goal to not increase middle-class taxes. It's just something that the media want to use against her. So she feels like she needs to weasel out of saying that she's increasing middle-class taxes. Bernie confronts it head on. He says, well, yeah, we're raising middle class taxes. And that will be a lot better for workers, a lot more likely for workers to get a raise in pay because their employers are not going to be paying for this tax. But if employers are paying the tax, then workers indirectly are paying the tax. Going back, and Matt's main point is, I think, is that bowing to the stupid media discourse is why Warren put forward a financial proposal that is clearly unworkable and bad. I think that's the point, that she's trying to get around saying that it's a tax increase for the middle class, even though it is. And it's regressive. With the tax, workers will get no raise since the total cost of hiring a worker will remain the same. We said that. Warren acknowledges this when she exempts unionized firms who would be allowed to reduce their tax payments if they pass along their healthcare cost savings in the form of wages, pensions, or benefits. Her proposal would be regressive. Warren's indirect levy is effectively a flat tax on all workers at the same firm, whether the workers make a lot of money or not very much money. It's per head, per capita. The money doesn't, the tax, which it is, doesn't distinguish between wealthy workers and less wealthy workers. By contrast, a straightforward income tax or well-designed payroll tax would be much more progressive, at least according to the conventional analysis that analyzes taxes separately from the government programs they finance. So in effect, she found a clever way to make middle-income people finance a portion of government health insurance without paying a direct tax. But make no mistake, they still will be paying. So Bernie's plan is a lot more honest.
Bernie's version of funding it and her version of funding it is, hers is more regressive. Because she chose to do it as a raw dollar amount, the Medicare head tax, it is more regressive. The other thing is, there's ways to weasel out of it, which is if businesses say, no, you're not my employee anymore, you're an independent contractor now,
then
they don't have to pay anything. So Matt Bruning goes on to point out, well, the whole thing can unravel because all these businesses will craft themselves to weasel out of paying for it. Whereas with Bernie's proposal, they can't weasel out of paying for it. No matter what they do, they have to pay it.
Right.
Hers, there's this giant loophole. Oh, you want to be, instead of being my employee, now I'm going to make you an independent contractor. And they say, oh, companies with 50 people or less, they're not required to do anything. Okay, well then all these companies are going to break down into subdivisions and have only 50 people working for each branch.
Yeah.
So there are ways around it. There are ways out of it. And that's the problem, is that it is going to raise taxes on the middle class, and it's going to do it in a more regressive way than Bernie's bill did it. So she crafted this bill to just try to get out of that argument. Now, the stunning thing about this is, she even said in one of her debates, she was like, no, the thing that matters is costs for the middle class comes down. Cost comes down. So if I eliminate your premiums, your copays, and your deductibles, that's basically a private tax because you have to pay it.
Yeah.
If I eliminate that, so let's say that's $10,000. Let's say I say, here's the $10,000, put it right in your pocket. And then my Medicare for All proposal, you're going to pay $8,000 in new public taxes. I just saved you $2,000.
Right.
So it doesn't matter that I raised public taxes. I saved you $2,000 because I eliminated the private taxes, the premiums, copays, and deductibles. Instead of making that argument, she's trying to weasel her way out of having that conversation at all. And she says, no, I don't even raise any middle-class taxes at all. Even though she definitely does, because a Medicare head tax is still a tax on the middle class.
He's not mentioning Elizabeth Warren's daughter, who is probably watching all of this with bated breath. What makes Elizabeth's daughter and other people in the health insurance industry okay with it is all the room it makes for wiggling out of it. What they need is something stealthy so that Elizabeth can wave her magic finger and tell people to be nice and to play fair, but then she makes this loophole-ridden plan, and that's why the big money people will still support it, because they can see how she's made all of this wiggling, waffling room that Bernie hasn't made.
So I don't... Listen, again, the good part is she's not saying anything about, we'll still have a role for-profit insurance companies, and I believe in choice. She dropped that language, which is definitely a good thing. But the bad thing is, she's using very weaselly arguments here, and a very strange funding method, just to try to get around criticisms that are bogus criticisms anyway.
Yeah, it's a pretty good description.
So all Bernie Sanders is talking about is the tax you already pay for Medicare that you have to wait till you're you have to wait till you're 65 for. Really, all he's talking about is raising that tax a little bit. That's all this man is talking about. Radical. Raise the tax you're already paying in Medicare for something you currently can't use unless you're 65. So, I think this shows Elizabeth Warren isn't serious, and frankly, by how Elizabeth Warren is talking about this publicly, I'm looking forward to this debate because I think she's going to have a hard time explaining this. Here's just an example.
Senator, when you say you won't raise middle-class taxes, what is the income bracket that you use to define?
Here it's 100%. It doesn't raise taxes on anybody but billionaires. And you know what? The billionaires can afford it, and I don't call them middle class. So, billionaire, that's where it worked.
Anyone under $1 billion net worth.
That's right, it's not paying a penny more. That's exactly
Not a
right.
penny more.
Well, to me, that's very interesting because what Elizabeth Warren just did is call our current president. She just called our current president middle class because Donald Trump, besides the fact that Donald Trump has been money laundering through Russia and Saudi Arabia and other...
Donald Trump probably is a billionaire when we get all the tax records. So he goes on to talk about the taxes and how Donald Trump... But if Donald Trump isn't a billionaire, then Elizabeth Warren considers him to be middle class. It's interesting if you watch her ad, it sounds like she's not going to raise... She says she's not going to raise middle-class taxes 1 penny, not 1 penny. But she's got this sneaky way to tax their employers who then won't pay them higher wages. It's really insidious. It's... This down-home, folksy woman is not what she seems to be. And until we open our eyes and really see what she's doing and why she's doing it, we see where her funding comes from, her billionaire donors, her connections to Hillary Clinton, her connections to Hollywood talent agencies, her connections to her daughter, who also runs a business talent agency in Hollywood. When we look at all of the different aspects, and her warmongering and her connection, if you look at the CIA's influence in Hollywood on the war policy, the Zionism and everything else that's ugly about neoliberals in general, you see somebody who does things that look confusing, and you say, why is she doing it like that? Why is she saying this? Why is she saying that? But if you understand all of the influences that I just mentioned and many more, then you start to see where she's coming from. And then you look at the DNC. It's interesting in light of the WikiLeaks, that the Democratic Party is completely haywire. We're talking about warmongering. That's another article I was just reading. But let's talk about meddling in the elections. The Democratic Party's bias against Senator Bernie Sanders during the 2016 nomination, followed by the DNC Defense Council doubling down on its right to rig the race during the fraud lawsuit brought against the DNC, as well as the irregularities in the races between former DNC Chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Tim Canova, indicate a fatal breakdown of the U.S. democratic process spearheaded by the Democratic Party establishment. Now, we knew about the Podesta emails, that the DNC acted in favor of Hillary Clinton. The emails also revealed corporate media reporters acting as surrogates of the DNC. Well, let me tell you, they're still acting as surrogates of the DNC. Nothing has changed. The only thing that's different is we won't necessarily have WikiLeaks to tell us what they're currently up to. But if you think they're not currently up to the same kind of garbage that they were up to last time, then there's a great bridge I need to sell you. I don't know which one I'll sell you, but I'm going to charge you a lot. The emails also revealed corporate media reporters, yeah, I just said that, and going so far as to promote Donald Trump during the GOP primary process as a preferred Pied Piper candidate. That's what's going on with Clinton, and she's still involved. She's still having meetings with Elizabeth, and one cannot assume that similar evidence will be presented, making it more important to take stock of the unique lessons handed down to us by the 2016 race. Maya Angelou again, she says, once somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Once you see what's going on, believe them the first time. Now, this is new to me, the social media meddling, and it's happening, for sure it's happening. I can vouch for the fact that Twitter is still suppressing messages they don't like. They admitted actively suppressing hashtags referencing the DNC and Podesta emails, and Google also showed, and that's YouTube, and YouTube is definitely still doing this stuff, they showed measurable pro-Hillary Clinton bias in search results. They're doing that on YouTube also. They're still doing it. Twitter suspended my account indefinitely. I've been suspended for months just because I tweeted to Elizabeth Warren's campaign about the fact that Bernie Sanders is the only one who can beat Donald Trump because of Bernie or Trump and Bernie or bust supporters. Twitter is actively suppressing the Bernie or bust hashtag, and YouTube also is. And it isn't just Bernie or bust, it's anything that might take down the establishment. So once we see someone for the first time, then we need to remember who they are, and we need to remember who the DNC is, and we need to remember who the media are, and we need to remember what we know about David Brock from the astroturfing last time. We need to remember who the talent agencies, Michael Kives, and the other talent agency execs. We need to remember the media. We need to remember Spike Lee. For Christ's sake, Spike Lee was on Bernie's side. I put his Bernie wake up video on my Facebook yesterday, and he came out for Kamala. I wonder what he's going to do next. If he's watching how they treat Susan Sarandon, then he'll probably keep his head down. It's disgusting. So what we know about rigging, what we know about the DNC, and what we know about this crazy proposal by Elizabeth Warren, Medicare for all, we see how she dances, and what we really know is she's going to pivot. She's got this all set up, and even more if she wins, which she can't win. We've already shown you why she can't win against Donald Trump in the general election. But if it were possible by some miracle that she did win, maybe Donald Trump will have a heart attack. And people would think of that as a good thing, and they would think of it as a good thing if Hillary had been elected or if Elizabeth is elected. But it's the same neoliberal bullshit that we've had for 70 years. We need something else. And if you want to avoid the yellow vests, if you want to avoid what the rich people did during FDR's time, because they had active leftist political parties at that time, and they had active labor at that time. I think it's inevitable. I really believe that it's already inevitable that Donald Trump is going to get elected, because I don't think this system here that you can read about in the consortium news is ever going to allow Bernie Sanders to be the nominee. It will take blood in the streets to get Bernie the nomination, or it will take blood in the streets after they rig it again to take the DNC out, to take away their influence, to start new parties, to build it from scratch. And that will be a lot bloodier and more violent than simply giving Bernie the nomination. And if it comes down to that, think about it. If you're a comfortable suburbanite, think about it. Would you rather have riots and pitchforks, or would you rather go quietly and give Bernie the nomination? Because a lot is at stake here, and it really comes down to democracy. It really comes down to freedom for the American workers. If you don't give a shit about the American workers, and they rise up and they put on their yellow vests and they do what they're doing, what workers are doing all over the world, then things are going to change for you. Your comfort level is going to go down. Your nice neighborhoods, your nice schools, your nice jobs, your nice health insurance, all the comfort you have now, it's not going to stay if the world goes the way it's going and you don't wake up in time. This is a big issue. It isn't simply solvable by vote blue no matter who. No matter who you screw. It's just not going to cut it, and you need to get over that shit now. Hope to see you tomorrow. Keep on burning.
Get on board the Bernie bus train. Come get on board the Bernie bus train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Oh, get on board